This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dumpster Diving. This week, we're talking about something that doesn't suck for once.
What?
I know, that's the twist part.
I wept on the plane to Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's true. So we're
speaking of which, James Lipton did die, which we forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, R.I.P. James Lipton.
Yeah, he seemed like a fun guy.
Yeah, former pimp, and I think he was like 100 or something like that.
He was pretty old. I don't know exactly how old.
Yeah, he was in his 90s. I remember finding that fact out, and I'm like, what the fuck? How is that fucking guy in his 90s?
Yeah, I don't know. He seems spry for someone his age, for sure.
Absolutely. But we're talking about Breaking Bad this week, and specifically, I believe it's episode 14 of season 5.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
Ozymandias.
Not just the Watchmen superhero either.
Right. Widely considered one of the best, if not the best episode of Breaking Bad ever, and possibly the best hour of television ever put to film.
In the history of the entire world.
I guess we could start with the title, kind of as you alluded to with the Watchmen. I mean, not necessarily connection, but the Watchmen character also, I would assume, gets its inspiration from the same thing.
It's actually interesting if you look at the episode where they're talking about how he got his name as Ozymandias. Mm-hmm. It's almost the exact same, images in some cases. The face halfway in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. But for those of you that don't know, Ozymandias is the name of a poem. Actually, two poems. One written by the most famous one, written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, best known as Mary Shelley's husband.
Yeah, which she wasn't at the time, but then she wrote, Frankenstein,
right?
And now we know her.
She invented the horror novel, basically, or the science fiction novel, or whatever they say. So that's where we're at. But Percy Shelley was a romantic poet. And the London Museum had recently acquired, him and his friend decided to, have a friendly competition by both writing sonnets. They were sonnet writers with the same title and the same kind of theme, because the London Museum had recently acquired at least part of, I think it was just the leg or a leg and some other parts of a statue of Ramses II, the Egyptian pharaoh, and the Greek name for Ramses was Ozymandias, so that's what the titles are, or the poem of the titles are. But basically, the theme of both poems is kind of how no matter how powerful you are, your empires are always going to fall. Time always gets you.
And that's what life is, a series of down notes.
Exactly.
Empire. We're talking about empire, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the empire always falls. And that's absolutely what's going on here. This is the final gasp of Walt's empire. As it says in the poem, probably the most famous line from the poem, this is from Percy Shelley's poem, is my name is Ozymandias, king of kings, look on my works ye mighty and despair, which is a
hell of an intro for a rap track.
It's a very forceful I'm the biggest badass kind of thing, but it's being read on it's being read on the nameplate of a statue where only the leg remains. I mean, that's the juxtaposition of it. So
right.
It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter how mighty you were, your time is now over. And that's absolutely the theme of this episode. It begins kind of flashing back, at to the first episode, really, or at least, their first cook, where Walt and Jesse are wearing, very unconvincing wigs, and doing this cook, and features one of my favorite lines where Jesse's about to light a cigarette and he goes, "Not in here," and he goes, "I know, like I'm an idiot," and he looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, like you're an idiot."
Yeah. This is obviously a flashback to better times. This is also when they decide the name Holly because Skylar calls him, and they go, "Oh, that's a good name," and then this is actually, obviously it's all linear. So what happens right before this episode is there's a shootout between the Nazis and the DEA, who Jesse has sicked upon Walt because he's finally tired of his shit and he thinks he's got him. But as we all know, you never quite get Walter White.
Right. But so Steve Gomez is dead. Hank is shot in the leg, and Jack, and his gang kind of come up, and Walt had tried to call them off. Before
he offers his entire fortune, which we discover is $80 million in these barrels that he's burying out.
So he says he basically pleads for Hank's life. Hank, as he points out, that Walter is the smartest guy he knows, but he's too stupid to realize that it's been over. He
tries to get Hank to say that he'll stop the investigation, that he'll just let this go, he'll let them be. But Hank, that's not something Hank would do.
Right. Yeah, and once they opened fire, as Jack points out, he's like, well, his partner's dead and he's wearing a bullet. Seems like, we're involved in this. So, he pleads for his life because this is, I don't even know if I want to call it his last, I guess, I would say this is probably his last vestige of humanity, or at least part of his last vestige of humanity, because, in the previous episode, we see him remorselessly murder a bunch of people, or have a bunch of people murdered in prisons in this highly coordinated way. Obviously he poisoned Brock. It says, he knew that he wouldn't kill him or whatever, but, poisoned him to reach his own ends. He's done all these monstrous things from the starting point that we see at the very beginning of this episode. But having, being a part of Hank's murder is too much for him. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Hank's going to arrest him. At that moment, nothing else matters but his family, as he points out, and a lot of this is about family and the final destruction of his family, where he says he's family and, you can't do this and everything. And then Jack, obviously shoots him and kills Hank, and Walt just falls to his knees. Absolutely.
And collapses in a perfect, symmetry with, the famous picture of, the face, obviously, it's just how it was and meant to be from the beginning. You could line them up. They're almost identical.
Yeah. Perfect camera work. Fantastic acting from Bryan Cranston. Just, absolutely incredibly choreographed. But yeah, perfect collapse. And that's that's just like him breaking. That's anything that was, I guess there's one other point in this episode where you can kind of, point to his humanity, but basically anything that was left of him that was good, breaks and shatters there.
He's lying there on the desert floor, and then he happens to notice that Jesse, who vanished during the shootout, is hiding under one of the cars.
Yep. And that's what he says. At that point, he
obviously blames him for Hank's death because Hank wouldn't be here if he hadn't.
Yep. And he, that coldness comes back over him. And, he says this his one thought, because he tries to give, like you said, he tries to give all his money, his $80 million to Jack to just let this go. Jack takes it anyway, obviously, but leaves him a barrel of.
Yeah, because Todd begs him to do so, because Todd just still has a really big affinity for Walter.
Yeah. But so Walt says, hey, you still owe me Pinkman. And he reveals where he is. They pull him out and everything. They're about to kill him. And then Todd
again. Yeah.
Todd
Mentions he goes, hey, he knows how to make this. He's his partner. We can, Todd himself is trying to make meth, but he knows he's not as good as Jesse or Walt. So, hey, we have our own, meth cook slave.
Yep, exactly. And so Walter, kind of agrees to it. But before he lets him go, he has to twist the knife in even more and reveals that he was present when Jane died. He reveals his culpability in that. Although I don't know if he even realizes, or if any of them realize, that he's even more kind of, responsible for her death than just watching her die, because, he goes to shake Jesse awake and he's the one that kind of knocks her over on her back.
Yeah. And then one final twist from Jesse as he leans in, Jesse says, I fucked Ted.
Yeah, that hurts.
Though really the carpet fucked Ted, I would think.
Yeah. I think that's when I didn't even know who Bill Burr was in that episode, but that's what I think made me look him up. Bill Burr was when he comes in and he's talking about what's going to happen. He's like, we're just going to sit here, we're going to watch TV, wait for this check to clear and everything. He's like, it's going to be great unless you don't have cable. Then it's going to suck.
Yeah, I like Bill Burr's character, Cuddy, I think his name is, or Kuby, something like that.
Kirby?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's
Cubby. I think it's Cubby. Cuddy is House and D I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, Cuddy's from House.
Yeah, he's really fun character in this. So yeah, so we see Walter driving, and then during the shootout, his fuel tank was penetrated by a bullet, so he's out of gas. So we just see him rolling, this big barrel full of money past the pants he lost in the first episode. If you pay attention.
Yep.
He shows up at someone's house and he basically just hands them wads of cash for their vehicle.
Yeah, for this beat up Chevy truck.
And then we cut to Marie. She's over at the car wash. She's telling Skylar, yeah, Hank called me. He's arresting Walt. But now that Walt's been arrested, we'll support you. But you have to, get rid of that tape you made, because in the previous episode they made a fake tape that made it look like Hank was, the mastermind behind this. And also she wants to tell Walt Jr. the truth. So Walt Jr. at first thinks, there's no way my dad's a criminal. And he says, hey, if that's true, you're just as bad, because you helped him with it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And yeah, Marie brings up something I think is interesting, where she says, I was thinking about how, so many things have to make sense to them now, where her jumping in the pool and all that shit. She's like, I was thinking about how you wanted them out of the house and everything. She's like, I know that there's that part of you that's still there that knows what he did was terrible and went along with it, and whatever he did to you, I think can be undone, and that can start now. And I mean, I kind of agree with her where she says, Walt Jr. deserves to hear it from, or Flynn, or whatever the fuck you want to call him, deserves to hear it from his family. I mean, I think that is probably better than seeing it on TV.
Oh yeah, for sure, because they both know that this will be like a huge story. Into their mind, the DEA agent arresting, his brother-in-law for being one of the biggest meth kingpins. It's obviously American scandal all over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but then Walt gets home. He starts rushing to pack all his stuff, and then Skylar and Walt Jr. show up with Holly, and he goes, pack your bags. And he goes, I'll tell you what happened. And then Skylar, thinking that Hank would be arresting him, asks him where Hank is. She repeatedly asks him, he refuses to answer. Mm-hmm. He gets heated. She grabs a knife and she cuts his hand. Walt gets on top of her, pulls the knife away. And then Walt Jr. starts, fighting his dad. He calls the cops, and he says, he's on the phone. He's like, my dad is beating up my mom. Then Walt grabs Holly and runs off. Yeah,
this scene is, obviously it's packed with a lot of dramatic tension. It's a fantastic scene.
It's 5 seasons worth of lies and deceit and trickery just coming to a boil at once.
Yeah, and the one of the key things that happens in this scene is, like you said, she pulls the knife, she cuts his hand and everything. He ends up grabbing the knife away from her, and he just screams at her. He's like, "What are you doing? We're a family." And he just kind of looks around at all this, there's blood on the floor. The house is trashed. His son is calling the cops. His daughter, his infant daughter's crying. His wife is, collapsed on the floor. I mean, they do not look like a family in any way at this point. This is.
I don't remember. Is this the episode where he admits that he did it all for himself?
No, that's the Felina.
The final.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the whole, he's like, I did it for the family. He's constantly feeding this line of bullshit. But yeah, he's away with Holly, and then the police show up with Marie. The phones are tapped, and Walter calls. And when Walter calls, he's just giving her all kinds of grief. He's saying, "You never support me during my criminal activities. You wouldn't help me hide this money and all this stuff." And then she's like, "What are you talking about?" And she realizes, he knows that the phones are being tapped, so he's basically giving out to them.
Yeah, He takes Holly, which is like the only family member that will go with him because she doesn't know any better. It's like
when she's crying and she says "mama," which is the first word you ever hear her say. On the entire show.
Yeah, she's like the mama and everything because he's at first it's like Walt doesn't do this just to like try to clear his wife. He really just wants to grab any piece of family that he can left. But when she starts, saying that, then he realizes he's like, I've destroyed this. I can't put this back together again. And that's when he decides to, that this is like the last kind of, truly like sort of altruistic thing that he does where, he leaves.
Yeah, we're always on the phone too. We must mention that Skyler's going. Where's Hank? You never told me where he is. He goes, well, you'll never see Hank again because the skinheads, the Nazi gang, whatever you want to call them, they threw him in the hole where the money was initially buried. So he's out in the desert somewhere, and I mean, for all we know, they never will find the body.
Yeah. So they've buried him, and Marie, obviously just loses it over that. He takes Holly to the fire department so that she can be reunited with her mom and her brother. And then he calls the fixer or the disappearer. Robert Forster, and he.
You see him on the side of the highway where they grabbed Jesse.
Yep.
Or where Jesse was waiting for it. I don't know if they grabbed him.
Well, he walked away from it, but yeah. But he takes him, and that's kind of where the episode ends. It's like if you looked at really simply, like this happens. It doesn't seem like a lot happens in this episode, but there's just a ton of ramifications, and a lot of scenes are really allowed to breathe. They they go on for several minutes, and we really
the direction by Ryan Johnson is very good in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. We really get to languish a lot in this misery. Basically, a lot of things that had been set up earlier in the season kind of come to a head here, and it's a very emotionally wrought hour of television for sure.
Yeah, this is interesting because out of context, if you've never seen Breaking Bad, it wouldn't be that impressive of an episode. But the way they kind of did a slow burn, for basically the entire show, this isn't technically the penultimate episode, but I mean, in a lot of ways it is, because everything after this is just like fallout and then just wrapping up loose ends. This is the key episode. I mean, you've waited so long. Everyone finally realizes what a horrible person Walt is. It's out in the secret, open to everybody. Like Marie didn't exactly know. I mean, she knew a little bit before this, but she didn't really. I mean, she probably would have never thought he would have murdered Hank. To her and to Walt's family as well. Hank is almost like this superhero type figure. He fought it out with the twins, and lived to tell the tale. He brought himself back from being paralyzed with Marie's quick handiwork. It's just a bunch of. Everything is led up to this episode, and it just unfolds. It's like a building collapsing in slow motion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's weird because I was talking to my friend Matt about this. It's kind of, I mean, what is your favorite episode of any TV show of all time? I mean, a lot of episodes are like you've described before, the bottle episodes where they just mean nothing outside of the one show. I mean, I have a lot of those I like, but as far as episodes included within the context of a bigger kind of tale, Breaking Bad, this probably is my favorite episode.
Yeah, I would I would agree. I think this is probably my favorite episode of television, especially when you consider it, as part of a longer story arc. Like you said, I mean, I could point to, like Star Trek, for instance, Measure of a Man, which is like very much a bottle episode where, somebody wants to take Data and replicate him basically, and it's more of a treatise on slavery and what is life and things like that. But that doesn't, I mean, it has some impact on later episodes, but it's not part of any kind of larger story arc. So, but that's, a great episode of that. And I could probably point to, certain episodes of other television shows. But when you're talking about, something that, especially that kind of interweaves into the, the more serialized elements of the story. Yeah, it's I can't think of anything better than this. Maybe Better Call Saul will have an episode where that happens as they get closer to whatever their conclusion is. Because I probably like that show more than Breaking Bad, which says a lot because Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows of all time. But yeah, so I don't know if that'll happen or not. But this is. It's one of those things where they put the puzzle pieces in place. It all fit together perfectly, and they literally could not have done this better. I mean, like,
no, there's nothing that would have made this a better episode.
Yeah, you could get anybody. You could get a collection.
You could get Erica, a lady popping out of a cake, and it would have made this a better episode.
Exactly. But yeah, this is basically the perfect episode for everything that they set up. And yeah, I would say it's my favorite episode of Breaking Bad and probably my favorite episode of any television show, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like single episodes that are, all within their own context, like of the X-Files or the show Millennium I liked a lot as well.
Yep.
Futurama has some really great episodes. The Simpsons still classically some of the funniest episodes, like the one thing Scorpio, I love that one, yeah, I mean, this might be the best episode of TV.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the praise is definitely worth it if you haven't seen Breaking Bad.
Either this or the series finale of Dexter.
Oh, God. Oh, Dexter. So, like,
Dexter was a very weird show because it worked really well sometimes, but it was terrible at it. And they would switch back and forth. They'd be like, oh my God, I need to stop watching this. And the next season's, it's very good now.
And that's the thing is that sometimes it would go from season to season where it's like, oh, this season's really good. This season sucks. This season's really good. Sometimes in certain seasons, it would be episode to episode.
Yeah, there was so much stuff they never resolved. Like, you watched the whole series of Dexter?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Like, remember that one guy who, got a job there because he was like a computer millionaire, but then he, had some weird thing going on, and then they just, stopped. They just stopped mixing him?
Yes.
Like, where were they going with that? And then, Masuki had a daughter, and that kind of just, fizzled out as well.
Right. I love
that weird incest stuff in the show.
I love that Dexter didn't want to raise Harrison, his child, because of what a monster he was. So he gave Harrison to another serial killer.
Yes.
What a great idea. Yeah, it was weird. For some reason I think they wanted Deb and the producers or the writers or whatever, for whatever reason, I think wanted Deb and Dexter to get together, and then
I think it's because they got married in real life.
Yeah, probably. And then, as it was going on, everyone hated it so much because they tried to justify it so much. They were like, "Well, they're not really brother and sister. They're, they're not related by blood in any way. It's, it's okay and stuff." And everyone was like, "No, this is gross and terrible." And then they just reveal "Oh, but Dexter's or Deb's dad." Harry was really biologically Dexter's dad too.
Yeah, and they made it worse.
Yeah, so
what's funny is I wonder if they'd stayed married if they would have just kept that going along, sure, why not? You're brother and sister. You're my sister.
Yeah, I don't know. It was very, very weird, but very terrible choice. The first season is based off of the book Darkly Dreaming Dexter, which I've read. I've read all the Dexter books.
All right, I just read the first one. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's not a great novel. It's okay. The first season of the show is better than the book.
Yeah.
But it's a good inspiration, I guess, for the first season. After that, none of them are based on none of the other seasons are based on the books. And
what I do like is, from what I've read little about the books, is that it actually is like almost like a god. His dark passenger is like an actual spiritual entity that's like gotten into his head or something like that.
Yeah, there's some voodoo. There's some weird voodoo stuff in it. Rita never dies. She's alive. At least unless he's written new books that I haven't read. But as far as I've read the first I think four or five books, she's still alive, and they eventually do get married, and it's an accident, him proposing to her. But anyway, so yeah, there's this weird like voodoo stuff that has to do with his dark passenger and everything. It's like it gets really. I'm glad that they didn't continue on with the books, because it gets really kind of weird and dumb. But they didn't do that much better with the show. So, I mean, the Trinity Killer season, that's probably the highlight.
Yeah. I mean, the first season is also very good, obviously. Yeah. I didn't think I would like it, but I did end up liking the one with Colin Hanks and Edward James Olmos. But I think a lot of that, in retrospect, was like because there was like a big gimmick in that season.
Yeah, agreed. But that's a good season too. Colin Hanks is very good in that.
Yeah, I like him. He's in Fargo as well. He's really good.
Yeah.
Chet, he'll be known as Chet Hanks' brother when it all settles.
Exactly. Chet Hanks' brother, and Tom Hanks will be Chet Hanks' dad.
Exactly.
Rest in peace, Tom Hanks.
I believe he's still alive. I hope.
Yeah, he's still alive. I think he'll probably
be doing well. I think
he'll probably live through this. He's got money.
Yeah, well, I would think so. I mean, he didn't. I mean, we know it's not. It's not every case is not obviously like super pneumonia and that kind of shit.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right.
I mean, he's older, but he seems pretty healthy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our dumpster.
Except for when he was doing that pedophilia stuff.
Exactly. Hashtag Sarah, whatever it was, Rourke. I don't remember.
Could be.
But anyway, so we'll talk to you next time for another dumpster dive, and probably something worse than this.
I think everything might be worse than
statistically. It's got to be something worse than this.
It's no pennies from heaven, too. Did you ever get any traction, or were you able to find her?
Oh, I found her, but she has not responded at all. And here's the thing: her last tweet was from like 2 years ago. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So I don't think she's really keeping up on it.
That's fair.
But yeah, we will talk to you next time.
See you next time. Oh, and I also am trying to start something with ScreenRant.com, who I hate. So I'm going to keep at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Screen Rant sucks. No offense, Screen Rant. Wait. Take offense.
They're terrible. Their Watchmen coverage was very wrong in almost every possible way.
I like Pitch Meeting with Ryan George, who has his own channel. Just go to Ryan George's channel because there's funnier stuff on there.
What is this? Is this where they like pitch like fake shows or something?
No. So basically what he does is he writes the whole, like, basically they just pay him money to do this. Like, I don't even think he's part of Screen Rant really. But they, he plays both parts and he writes it. And so, like, that new movie that came out, what's it called? Our Dad's Just Legs. Our Dad's Just Legs and We're Elves or something.
What?
I think it's called Onward. I think that's what it is.
Oh, okay. I was say it's Peter Dinklage in this, but never mind.
You know that
Tony, I can't remember his name. The guy from Me, Myself, and Irene. He's in a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah. You know that guy. That movie Onward was written and directed by somebody that went to Clawson High School.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, Dan Scanlon.
I think you mentioned him before.
But anyway, so yeah, I knew his brother Andy better. But anyway, so like that movie came out, right? So he does a pitch meeting where he's like a fictional screenwriter, pitching Onward to a fictional like executive, and they, it's a humorous take on things. Like he'll say, I'm trying to think of a good example from a good Like not a good movie, a bad movie. But he's like, so like the Super Mario Brothers movie, he did that once when I think when Sonic was coming out, and he's like, oh, you know how in the Mario Brothers game, the Goombas are these little mushroom guys, and the business executive guys like, yeah, he goes, well, now they're tall dudes with really shrunken heads, like just I don't know. He's like, why'd you do that? And he's like, I don't know, like I don't care about any of this stuff, and like I don't know. He just like he goes back and forth, and it's very funny. So if you have a chance, check out Pitch Meeting. Look for a movie you hate and watch the pitch meeting for that, because it's usually pretty satisfying.
I always heard that the pitch meeting for Hogan's Heroes was like one of the best pitches ever done.
Really?
Which it would have to be. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, okay, it's a humorous show, Nazis, POW camp.
Yeah. I just remember from that movie, I can't remember what it was called, but the one with Autofocus with Greg Kinnear.
Very good movie.
Ed Begley Jr. From St. Elsewhere has he has a role in that movie. He plays a reporter, and basically he's like, Greg Kinnear as Bob Crane's trying to justify the show and everything, and Ed Begley Jr. is like, yeah, I lost a father in Auschwitz or something like that. And he just like walks away from it, like, you fucking asshole. Oh, it's great.
I know someone who's going on your list now.
Oh yeah, St. Elsewhere, love it.
No, the other list.
Well, oh yeah. But anyway, that's our episode. We will see you next week. Bye.
See you next time.